Today, we have got an amazing show lined out for you guys. We have an employee, a former employee from the state of Kentucky who worked directly for the Office of Inspector General. Now, his job was healthcare enforcement. We all know my story with healthcare or lack thereof. This man was a paid whistleblower. His job was to go in and do site surveys on doctors' offices and nursing homes. And if he saw something that wasn't right, he would blow the whistle on these types of actions or inactions to improve the overall conditions of the facility and to improve the patient experiences and perhaps some safety issues that were going on. And with that, we're going to bring on Tony Cisney. He is the former employee of the state of Kentucky. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Brian. How you doing?
Good, man. I hope I set that up okay. I know your case is complex. It's been in and out of court. You have sued the state of Kentucky, and I know it's gone all the way to the top.
Yeah, I try to take it all the way to the top, but unfortunately, since I no longer had a job at the time, I didn't have money to pay more to go to the Supreme Court after, I'd already appealed it twice. But all the information is still waiting to be sent to the Supreme Court.
So your job working with the Office of Inspector General was to go around and to basically do these site surveys. What would you typically see? What is a normal day when you're working for the Office of Inspector General in the state of Kentucky as a healthcare enforcement worker?
Well, what would normally do, there'd be different teams that would go out to different nursing homes that had to be inspected, once a year. There would be anywhere from 5 to 6 people on a team, ranging from nurses, dietitians, different things like that. But I was the actual only one that they had ever hired that was actually a certified investigator, because that's what I did with my previous job at the Public Defender's Office for over 7 years.
So when you work for the Public Defenders, I mean, so you have a slew of experience here when it comes to a lot of different things, especially in the investigative field, as you're going through and looking at so much of this stuff in these healthcare facilities.
Right. And unfortunately, I found out that they didn't want that. Normally they would go in, they wouldn't. If you don't want to see something that's wrong, you're not going to see it. But with my background, I looked for everything and then tried to find out why something happened. And that's when I started uncovering a lot of cover-up.
So what would the motivation be here from the state of Kentucky to want to cover up cover-ups?
It's all about the money. Just like anything else, follow the money trail. If someone actually wants to find out why things aren't getting done in the state of Kentucky, they should listen to someone that has the information, because it's all out there in court record. Like I said, everything that I discovered was reported. The first time I reported it was to a person that I knew from Christian County when I worked with the Public Defender's Office, a state senator. Did you have any questions on that, or?
Well, no, I was just wanting to ask, do you have any examples of you going into a facility and
Right.
you seeing issues there that need to be addressed immediately? What's the protocol on something like that? And give me an example of something that happened that was ultimately covered up and turned a blind eye to.
Well, if anybody's been into a nursing home, they know as soon as you open the front door, if you're hit with the smell of urine, that automatically tells you that something is wrong. Because you're going to, if you're in a nursing home or hospital, yes, you're going to smell, things, every now and then. But if it almost knocks you down when you open the front door, and bear in mind, these facilities aren't supposed to know when we're coming. So that would start, investigation trying to find out where the smell leads to, which leads to, other things as far as patients not being attended to, not being changed when they needed to. It leads to understaffing. Then that opens the door to a slew of other investigations, because one small thing can branch out and start developing major issues in these nursing homes.
So when you would go out and you would basically be uncovering unsanitary type conditions, let's use the nursing home as an example, the strong urine, and perhaps some of the employees in there, maybe not doing their job according to the handbook, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Would you file a report, or how would you begin to fix the issue and bring it up to industry standards?
Well, for one instance, as far as when I found one individual in pain, what we do when we go in, we split up and we have different duties that we're in charge of, and we have certain residents that will follow for the time that we're there. And one individual that I had already spoke to, he had a catheter, and when I went back to talk to him a second time, I could tell there was something wrong, and he said, "I'm hurting," and there was all kinds of tissues on the floor, and and I said, "Well, this is at the time we were getting ready to go to lunch," and so I went and talked to his nurse, which was an LPN, and she said that she would relay the message to the RN. And so when we got back from lunch, I went back to the resident, and I said, "How are you doing?" He said, "No one's been here since you've been here." Now, we were gone for an hour and a half, and so I immediately went to the first LPN that I talked to, and she said, "Well, I talked to the nurse." Well, I went to that nurse. She said, "I had no idea what you're talking about." I said, "Well, you need to come with me." We immediately went to the resident's room. I stayed outside. She went in, was in there for a few minutes, came back out, gave me a strange look, and she said, "Well, I know why he was in pain." She said he had a blocked catheter, and once she fixed it, he voided 400 units of urine. So this man was in pain for an hour and a half with a blocked catheter. And if anybody has had to use a catheter before, which unfortunately I have, and you cannot go to the bathroom, that is the worst pain that you could experience.
Absolutely.
And so that's a problem in itself. So when she came out, she told me the problem. I said, "You need to get the administrator." The administrator of the facility came down and told her what the problem was. And while they're talking, I went to my team leader and explained to her what the situation was. And once, I told her that I told everybody, she looked at me with someone sitting beside me. She said, "You need to drop it." I said, "Excuse me?" She said, "You heard me. I said, you need to drop it." Well, that right there is causing the resident to be in pain. That should have been an immediate jeopardy, which changes the total structure of the survey, because once you find that a resident is in pain or has suffered neglect, that totally changes. That's when it goes to Frankfurt. Frankfurt forwards it up to CMS, which is in Baltimore. And then that's when fines and penalties are placed on these facilities. Well, by her telling me to drop it, then that means it didn't get initiated to an immediate jeopardy, which means fines and penalties was not placed just for that one instance, which there was others at that place. So what that does, that's actually fraud, because that would have been money that went to the federal government. And so, like I said, that was just one instance at that one facility. and there was, numerous other, issues, but for that one team leader to tell me to drop it, that was a major red flag. Now, bear in mind, she was a nurse, a former nurse that actually trained nurses in and around Louisville. So she knew some of these nurses in these facilities. So when you have someone that's in charge of all these surveyors and tells you to drop it, and she had no qualm with anybody hearing her, that's a major problem. Because if it was my loved one in there and I found out that happened, oh, there'd be hell to pay. And there should be.
Who is she beholden to?
Well, that goes into a whole nother issue, because I had been on the survey with this individual on other instances, and the same thing had come up. And the last time I worked a case for the Office Inspector General, it involved the same team leader. And when all these things came out, everybody kept saying, well, who's getting paid? I was like, I have no idea. Believe me, if I knew, you would know. But nobody wanted to do the investigation. But the records are there, and luckily for the records, because when I first started with OIG, I had a very good surveyor that had been there for a long time. She told me, you need to make copies of everything that you do, because if something happens, they'll throw you under the bus. I guess she was a fortune teller, because that's exactly what happened.
Can you explain to me what that means? Exactly what that meant. I mean, I know what it's like to throw somebody under the bus, but when you're working for the Office of Inspector General in the state of Kentucky, going around and doing spot checks on nursing homes and medical facilities to ensure that they are meeting the standard of care, and you are reporting negligence, and they say not seeing it, and then to get basically threatened that they're going to throw you under the bus. I need you to explain to me exactly what that meant and what her motivation was in her language.
She had told me that she had reported something before also, and nothing had happened. And so with me being a defense investigator, like I said, I've worked thousands and thousands of cases where we were trying to defend someone that was charged with something. So I've seen it now from both sides. And like I said, this wasn't, the first time that I'd found something. All these things started adding up. And there were some major problems that should have been looked at, for days and days. And like, for one instance, when Matt Bevin was governor of Kentucky, that was when it's in the, the news, and there's reports online about Planned Parenthood and the abortion clinic here in Louisville, Kentucky. Well, there was 2 surveyors that went to the Planned Parenthood, which was strange, because this was the regional manager and her assistant. So they're the top ones at our office. They never go out, just them two, and investigate something, but they did. At the same time, I was instructed to go and do a survey at the abortion clinic here in Louisville, Kentucky. And immediately I started having issues. And after that one, I can go into more detail as far as what happened. But whenever there's issues at a facility, they have to, do a report and try to do a correction plan. And you go back at a later date unannounced to see if they had fixed these things. Well, I kept waiting to go back to the abortion clinic, and I was never told anything. So I went and asked, they said, "Oh, it's already been taken care of." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, who went back?" They said, "Oh, nobody." I said, "Nobody." They said, "Oh no, we did a desk review, a desk audit." And wait a minute. If it's just like copies of paperwork, I can see that. But the things that I found, there is no way that there should have been a desk review. I found numerous syringes in the trash can at the abortion clinic with propofol still in it, in the trash can. I found that I always check the narcotics locker in some of these places, and I asked to do a count of the narcotics, and I kept getting a runaround. I said, I need to see and do a count of the narcotics in this facility. Well, the RN that's in charge, she said, I can't. I said, what do you mean you can't? She said, I don't have a key. I said, you don't have a key? I said, well, where's the doctor? So the doctor that was on call that did the abortions, she came. I said, I need to see the narcotics that's in that locker. And she said, well, she asked the nurse, well, let him see it. She said, I can't. I don't have a key. So here we are at an abortion clinic that they had already done some that day, getting ready to do more, and had no access to the narcotics locker that they would give a patient if they needed that medication. That was a huge problem because the administrator had the key. She wasn't even in that day. She was taking her son to the airport. And with her being gone, I asked to see the policies and procedures. Well, I couldn't see that either. I said, why not? Well, they're locked up. I said, okay. Well, I said, where's the key? She said, the administrator has the key. So, okay, here we go. If you see this, okay, now there's no policies and procedures to follow to carry out if they can't get into the narcotics locker. So now these not the residents, these patients are at risk. There's no way to get to the narcotics. There's no way to find out what to do. And after all that, like I said, there was other things that I found there. There was probably over 1,000. I can't remember the exact number. It was over 1,000 vials of propofol that was stored there.
What is that?
Propofol is one of the medications that they give for to sedate someone. And at the time, I actually reached out to the DEA, and at that time, it was not a controlled substance. So the propofol, even though it was secured, they had never heard of a facility having over 1,000 bottles of propofol. And so there was numerous, other issues that was found there, and for them to just do a desk audit. But the problem is, when I had my exit appointment with the administrator, she sat down across from me and she said, why are you trying to shut us down? She said, don't you know that we're the only facility in Kentucky that does this? I said, I'm just doing my job. And there was doctors. There was a doctor that didn't have her TB test there. There was nurses there that hadn't been trained on some of the things that they were doing. There was numerous employees that didn't have, proper, TB test things that had to be done. And for them just to sweep this under the rug, I mean, that was something that was I tried to bring up in my trial, and I thought we were going to be able to do that. But at the end, I mean, this can go on for a long time, but that was a major cover up because my own attorneys were not going to bring it up in court. And I found out later, which is another issue, the judge that I had, his wife was a abortion activist, a pro-abortion activist here in Louisville. So I'm in front of a judge, and I think I'm going to be bringing up just one of the cases about an abortion clinic, and come to find out his wife is for abortions. And so that was one of the things I tried to bring up on my appeal, that I should be able to get a new trial. Also, I found out that the judge was friends with a female on the jury. Her husband was a doctor, and none of that was revealed at the time. And so all these things have been covered up. And the big thing that got me is just recently, the acting governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, got on national news and proclaimed to be a Christian in one sentence, and then talk about abortions, being in favor of abortions in the next sentence. Now, he was actually, at this time, he was the attorney general that I brought a lot of this stuff issues to, and nothing was done. Then he was elected governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. I brought it to his office again. Nothing was done. So,
all right, so let's back up a little bit here. All right, so you came across a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
Working as a surveyor, if you will, in the healthcare enforcement arena. And you would document it and you would turn it all in. I'm sure some stuff was acted upon and some stuff was protected.
A lot was changed.
Now you all of a sudden got into, they weren't doing this, and then all of a sudden you were in court, and all of a sudden you're talking about a judge, and you're talking about the former governor Matt Bevin, and then Governor Andy Beshear. Can we tie all that stuff in together? Exactly what led this to court?
Well, when I found all these things, I tried to, there locally, nothing was being done. So the only person I knew, now bear in mind, I was a criminal defense investigator. And so I contacted a state senator, Whitney Westerfield. Now, bear in mind, Whitney Westerfield was part of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and he was a prosecutor. I was on the defense side. So I was not friends with Whitney Westerfield. We were opposite. So I called him, which he had no idea where I was working, hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. And I told him all the details of all the things that I had found. And after listening to it, bear in mind, I was an investigator for a long time. My calls were recorded. Luckily, they were recorded, and I still have them. And so after I told him everything, he said, I can't do anything. He said, I think it's a conflict because, he was a state senator, but he gave me a name of someone. I said, do you trust him? He said, absolutely. I said, who is it? He told me the name Steve Pitt. I said, I haven't. He was actually Governor Bevin's general counsel. So this is the number one attorney in the state of Kentucky. So I called Steve Pitt, and Whitney Westerfield had already called him to let him know that I'd be calling because, now I called him at the governor's office. So that accept calls just from anybody and talk to someone about this stuff. So I got through, and immediately, I started telling him all these things. Really nice guys, Steve Pitt. Now, bear in mind, Steve Pitt had been a prosecutor for a number of years, federal prosecutor, and he was brand new. And Matt Bevin brought him in. So he was brand new. I mean, months only been there. And so he immediately started thinking, illegal activity, which it was. And so he told me, he said, I'm going to tell you, he said, you need to declare that you are now a whistleblower and you're under the whistleblower status, and you need to report back to OIG. And this is exactly what you say. He told me word for word what to say to report back to the Office of Inspector General. I repeated back to him what I had written down. Now, bear in mind, I recorded that call also. And so after that, I forwarded that information on to OIG, and I also sent it back to Mr. Steve Pitt. And at that time, that's when I became a official whistleblower in the state of Kentucky.
Stop right there. Aren't you already basically a whistleblower at your job anyways,
Exactly.
being healthcare enforcement? I mean, your job, the state of Kentucky is going to pay you, or they did pay you a salary to go and inspect these medical facilities. And when you find something to be out of place or that is not meeting the standard of industry, the industry standard, you need to do a report, and then they go and fix it. And if it's not fixed, they get fined and then audits, and
they can be shut down.
Being red taped and shut down. So why now are you going to get this whistleblower status? Was it because you were blowing the whistle on a very powerful conglomerate like Planned Parenthood?
Oh, exactly. And now bear in mind, he also did a video deposition, which everyone can find online. He said that at the time he was giving legal advice to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, which is under OIG. So here is the governor's attorney that's giving legal advice to OIG. Now he's given a employee information to become a whistleblower against the same agency that he gives legal advice to. And I think he found out really quick that he shouldn't have done the right thing, because that changed really quick. I think the powers above him let him know that the position he was in, he shouldn't have been giving me the information. That was correct. He did. I believe he was trying to do the right thing, but he didn't.
How long were you a healthcare enforcement worker working directly for the OIG in the state of Kentucky?
Almost a year.
Okay.
I mean, not long. So the stuff that I found was, it was blatant right in front of you.
Whose spot did you take? If you were only there for a year, you had to have taken somebody's spot. Did they quit because of just low morale, or did they move on and move up the chain?
Oh, it was a huge turnover. And it still is. It got to where after what happened with me, almost everyone left. And it's still continuing. The issues that was happening when I was there, they're still going on.
So out of the 1 year that you were there, and I don't need to know an exact number, just some, a hypothetical, if you will, or a guess. How many inspections did you do for the state of Kentucky within nursing homes and healthcare facilities in 1 year?
Oh, wow. I would say probably 30 to 40, maybe more. Unfortunately, I can't remember the numbers, but
no, that's fine. Let's say 30. So out of the 30, how many problems did you have that you actually had to put on paper that we have some issues here that need to be resolved immediately?
I would say out of all the inspections that I did, there was only a handful, maybe four or five nursing homes that were really good, that did not have, you can find something, but when you go on a facility and it's hard to find anything wrong, that's pretty good. And there are some, but I would say almost every facility that I went to, I would find something. And that was what they were upset about, because I reported what I found, and a lot of people did not. So if I'm reporting everything, and there's some people not reporting anything at all, then they would think, okay, I'm just reporting, everything that I find. Well,
right.
if you don't, something small can lead to something big really quick. And that's exactly what had happened in some facilities that caused them to be shut down and bulldozed
Right.
over.
And you have to CYA, you're going in there, like
Exactly.
you said, if I don't report this small little frivolous thing now, well, then it could grow into a wildfire and a blazing inferno in a month.
Exactly.
Now, the reason why I'm asking that is because they were paying you to go do a job that now all of a sudden you were too good at your job and they didn't want you doing your job to the standards that
I was hired
you
to do. Exactly.
And so how did this get to court? Like, I want to know, like, so you're doing all this stuff, Planned Parenthood, you've got the state involved all the way up to the highest levels with with the governor and the attorney general, and you're already working for the OIG. You have whistleblower status right now. How did this get to court? Who sued the state of Kentucky?
Well, I should have done a little bit more research, but I did find a law firm here, attorney by the name of Stuart Abney, and I contacted them and told them the issues and everything, and it took them a while to decide if they would take my case, which they did, and it took probably a couple of years to even get a court date.
So Tony, so you are the one that sued the state of Kentucky because of
yes,
this?
Yes.
Now, why?
When I left, they did not actually fire me. I had to leave. It was called a constructional discharge, because if I would have stayed, I would be complicit to the corruption that was going on. So, by what I was reporting, since by the wordage that I was given by the main attorney in the state, that's when I became a whistleblower and, like I said, tried to the corrective issues, which they couldn't. So then they tried to, sue them in court.
Did they respect your whistleblower status?
No, not at all.
Explain.
Well, with whistleblower status, you're supposed to be protected. And during the trial, after I testified, I said some things on the stand that they didn't want me to say, because, at that time I found out what was going on, and I knew that would probably be my only chance to get out on record some of the issues. Well, immediately that day after court, the attorneys were upset, because they were trying to get me to stop talking. As you can tell in here, I can talk, and they tried to stop me. I said, no, I'm going to finish speaking. Now, this is in court, jury present, judge sitting there, and that did not go well. And then I started finding out why. Now, bear in mind, at the very beginning when this started, my attorneys were suing the state for $1 million. Okay, then when trial started, it went up to $5 million. Now, the very day of trial, I went to my attorney's offices before court, and they tried to convince me to drop the case. They were going to pay me $20,000 out of their own pocket if I did not go through with the case. No, that makes no sense.
You are suing the state of Kentucky because of inaction and corruption on what you uncovered at Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
You went out and you found an attorney.
Yes.
That attorney is now suing the state of Kentucky for $1 million.
At the very beginning. Then it turned into $5 million.
Where would that money go?
Part of the money would go to the attorney and the rest would go to me.
Oh, okay. Why would that money go to you?
Because of the having to leave my job. Because, like I said, I was a state employee. I would have already been retired if that didn't happen. And it was for punitive damages, and also for pain and suffering, for mental health, emotional distress, and like I said, that was a huge red flag when they wanted to drop out and pay me $20,000 out of their own pocket. They wouldn't get a dime.
Your attorneys must have seen something here. And I understand the $1 million. I mean, look, you got your livelihood stripped away from you. You were doing your job by the book. You blow the whistle on something that was a very serious, accusation, and the accusation turned into be proven, to be fact, right, in
Yep.
the court of law. And now you've got some very made men in the state of Kentucky that you are now standing up and fighting against, to include the governor and the governor's general counsel. I mean, I'm talking, it doesn't get more powerful than that in the state of
No,
Kentucky.
that was it. That was it. That's the high as you could go in Kentucky.
Right. And so how did your attorney say this 1 million is now going to be 5 million? Who came to that conclusion?
The attorneys did. I kept asking them, and they couldn't tell me, because I kept asking them, well, how much are you asking for? They never would tell me.
So that means that your attorney saw something here that was going to be a slam dunk, because there's no way that you're going to go from 1 million to 5 million unless you know that you've got blood in the water.
Exactly. Because like I said, before, everything that I reported was backed up by hard facts, records, recordings, pictures. There was no defense. Now, bear in mind, I was a defense investigator, so I would help the attorneys make their case. So there was no case for them, because everything that I reported was documented, was hard facts. So there was no way to get out of what was there. And that's how bad it was. Because
now, as I'm beginning to connect some dots here, I think I know what's going on in my head, but being a podcaster, I would be doing my listeners and everybody else a disservice if I didn't ask this question as if I know nothing about the case. When your attorneys brought it to 5 million and then did an about face, brought you into a room and said, hey, let's drop this. We're going to give you 20,000 out of our own kitty, if you will. Why do you think that happened? Do you believe that they were perhaps approached by the state of Kentucky?
And I'm going to tell you, I have no actual proof. So I'm going to say I do not have actual proof. I can only go by the actions, because, like I said, it wasn't that they offered me that money, after we've been in court. That was before even court started. So that was before even any evidence had been presented. We hadn't even walked to the courthouse yet.
Yeah, because to give somebody 20,000 out of their own pocket, that means that they're going to be getting something from somebody. And an attorney,
exactly.
We all know attorneys just don't give out money.
No, and these were young attorneys too. And so it got even worse. Because bear in mind, I'm a whistleblower. I'm supposed to have protection. And after that day of court, when they tried to get me to drop it, I went home. I was extremely stressed. I had, not to mention, I have all my physical problems that I've been dealing with through the VA, that I'm on medication already. My stress level was off the roof. So when I went home, I drank 1 beer and I took my medication along with an extra oxycodone, which I was prescribed. I was at home. Then I got a call from my attorney. And you can tell, if you're listening to my voice, you can tell I talk pretty fast. And going back and bear in mind, remember, all my calls are recorded. Because when I was a defense investigator, I would get calls all hours of the day, Monday through Friday, on the weekends. And sometimes, people would tell me things, and if I didn't have it recorded, I would miss it, because a lot of times I would find out things that was said during the conversation that I didn't catch. So when he called, he said that, what did I want to do? He said, we need to settle. And I said, well, what can you do? He said, well, let me call the attorneys for the state and see what they will settle for. Well, I get a call back, and you can tell if you listen to the recordings, there's a long pause whenever he tries to get my attention. And it's because of the medication that I took, along with, drinking a beer and the oxycodone. I'm not hearing, or I'm not responding like a normal person would, or like I would now. Mm-hmm. And so he started telling me things. I asked him questions. He said, well, if you settle, you can bring this up at a later date with different attorneys and all this information and all these things that he said that I could do. So it basically be like starting it over again. And I said, okay. And so I said, see what you can do. Well, he got a call back, and he said, well, it's not good. He said, I spoke to an attorney, which was part of the team from the state. His name was Matthew Kleinert. He said, well, they will settle, but if you don't settle, you're not getting anything. Plus, if you don't settle, they're going to come after you for all the money they have invested in the trial. They're going to put liens on your house. They're going to garnish your wages. I said, I'm the whistleblower. I said, what did you say? Nothing. And so
you have the state of Kentucky retaliating against you, that is threatening your counsel for you to drop the case, or else we're coming for you and we're going to take all your assets.
Yes. And they even put it in writing. I don't know how stupid they were, but they actually, in the court records, they put, that was part of the settlement agreement. Now, bear in mind, everything that my attorney, Stuart Abney, told me that I could do in the settlement agreement. Well, bear in mind, that night he called back and he said, well, you don't need to go to court the next day. We don't think you should. And the attorneys for the state said you don't need to go to court. Well, bear in mind, I was still under medication. I should have been thinking, like, that don't make any sense. Why don't they want me to go to court the next day? So the next day I get up and I end up getting a call, and it's my attorneys. They said, can you get down here to, downtown to the court? I said, what are you talking about? You told me last night that I wasn't supposed to go. And the attorneys from the states, they said, I know, but the judges want us in there. I said, there is no way that I can get down there at that amount of time. Well, he said, well, I'll call you after court and let you know what happened. Well, he called and he wouldn't tell me the details of the agreement. I said, well, email it to me. He would email it to me. So finally, when I went to the attorney's office, I guess they thought I was stupid or something. They had some papers, about 5 pages, and they had it turned to the back page where all the people supposed to sign that was an agreement, and it had my signature spot. It had the acting attorney general. The inspector general. It had the attorney for the inspector general's office, OIG's office. It had my attorney, and then it had me. And everybody had signed and dated except me. And I said, I need a copy of this. And he said, you want it signed or unsigned? I said, an unsigned copy. So when he went to get a copy, he already had another copy there that I was reading. And it was totally opposite of what my attorneys had told me, and had all this stuff in there that I couldn't do anything that I did not agree with. It was basically, if I signed it, it was over and done. And like I said, this was nothing that I had reported all this stuff for, that I would even think about, just dropping. And so when he came back, I said, I'm not signing this. And there was one word in there, with or without prejudice. I said, so I get confused on those two. I said, so the way it reads now, I cannot bring this back up. They said, correct. I said, well, call the attorney's office, the state attorney's office, and tell them that I won't sign it unless they change, some things in here. Well, they wouldn't do it. They would not make any changes. And so that's when, they had already went to the judge the day that they told me not to come in, and told the judge that we were in agreement and we were wanting to settle the case, which was a total lie. I did not agree to any of the things that they had told the judge that we were in agreement to. And so that's when it started. Now I'm not just going up against the state. I'm going up against the state, their attorneys, and my own attorneys.
So,
and luckily, one good recording that I've got is when my attorney, Stuart Abney, called, and I said, Stuart, how can I sign an agreement of something I knew nothing about, that knew nothing was in there? He said, well, that'd be a good question for the judge. So he admitted that I knew nothing about the contents of the agreement that they said that I was agreed to, but I would have to bring it up to the judge, which I did. And that's when I started.
So where does it stand now?
Well, I had to appeal. Well, my attorneys, they filed to withdraw from the case. They had to explain to the judge what happened. In open court, I pointed at every one of the attorneys and said that they lied to the judge, which they did. I told them that I was threatened, which they did, which they put in writing. They put in writing the exact things that I was telling you, that if I did not agree to the settlement, that they were going to do all these things. It's in writing, in court records. And then, the judge was upset. He said, I had, two officers from the court that came to me and told me that, we were in agreement. And now you're saying that. I said, Judge, why in the world would I get up here and disagree with all this stuff if I was in agreement to it? I said, it makes no sense. So that's when the appeals started. I had to get another attorney to start doing an appeal. And I had no extra money. Luckily he was doing it fairly cheap. And I had some other organizations donate some money, because bear in mind, one of the problems that I had was with the abortion clinic. So the Catholic Church got involved locally. And so this is getting big now. The Sir Thomas More Society, I think they were in Chicago, actually contributed to my attorney some money so he would do some of the paperwork. But then, to get to the Supreme Court, I had to do more paperwork, which now I have no money to do that. And the last appeal was for me to get a new trial, or just an evidentiary hearing. And they went back to the same judge that had the issues with, and he'd said it wouldn't be fair to the state if we got a new trial, because it would, put a financial burden on the state. How is it going to put any more burden on the state now than it was going to be before?
All of this is all just over a site survey that you found to be unsatisfactory, and they had the they were warned to get it cleaned up, right? And they had every opportunity to get that mess cleaned up so they could operate a safe place for women to go and receive the care that they need. And because they didn't clean it up, this is where everything led.
Oh, I mean, it just snowballed. Just like with you, if one simple thing could have been fixed, it wouldn't have led to where you're at now. Well, one of these facilities was so bad, they ended up shutting it down and bulldozing it over. Because since it had been neglected as far as the correct surveys over the years, when I went in with actually the person I mentioned earlier that gave me advice as far as making, copies of everything, we went in there on a complaint and started finding all these problems. And so then a huge team came in, and they ended up shutting that facility down. Now here's a big problem, huge problem. When they shut that facility down, they had to send these residents to other locations. And one of the individuals in particular that I had talked to for, weeks, because I had been in there, during this process, was this one female. She was in a wheelchair. Well, when they transported all these residents everywhere, they had to transport her to another facility. Well, they actually transported her in the electric wheelchair in a vehicle. Something happened on the way between the nursing home she was at and the nursing home where she was going, because apparently her scooter was not secured properly. And this individual already had some brain issues, medical problems. Well, when they had the small accident or whatever, and she was jostled around in the vehicle, once she got to that facility, she died within an hour after being there. Now, if that facility had been inspected over the years the way it should have been, it would not have been shut down. They would not have been relocated, and she would not have lost her life. That is a fact. It's in the records.
And so did you have experts that were testifying on your behalf?
Oh, I thought there was going to be. But my attorneys, they didn't talk to the people I told them to. They wanted me to contact these witnesses. I said, I'm not doing that, because I knew as a defense investigator what would happen if someone on the other side that wasn't the attorneys were questioning these witnesses. It could be intimidation of a witness. So they wanted me to call all these witnesses and talk to them. I said, I'm not doing it. I said, I'll sit beside you when you call them. But they wanted me to do that, which would have led to, reasons to dismiss the case. I wasn't going to do it.
So we've got threats to you and your assets.
Mm-hmm.
We have your attorneys basically doing an about face and basically almost committing, and I'm just alleging this, some sort of a legal malpractice.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're going up against some very, very powerful men in the state of Kentucky. Did you
that
ever
I know about?
Did you ever feel that your life was in risk or your life was in jeopardy?
Every single day.
What'd that feel like?
What did it, or what does it?
What did it and what does it feel like?
Well, that's because, yes, I knew some of the big players, but there was a lot of people behind the scenes. So you never know who this is affecting as far as if this information comes out, because people would start talking if the investigation was done the way it should have been.
Are you still holding these chess pieces?
Absolutely.
What's your plan moving forward with these chess pieces?
I need an attorney. I've talked to numerous attorneys, some powerful attorneys, some that's been on the national news. But the one that I really wanted, he wanted a $10,000 retainer. That was before all this stuff has been happening now, because it's been snowballing since then. So, I mean, I've reached out to attorneys in different states. They've all looked at it. When I contacted Washington, Health and Family Services, they said that I wish I would have contacted them first, because since it already been brought up in state court, they couldn't get involved. Now this is in Washington, and like I said, they try to change Kentucky state law because of my case. They wouldn't be doing that if what I brought up was frivolous and there was nothing to it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You're calling these attorneys. Are they saying, well, your case isn't legitimate, or are they afraid to go against
exactly
the former governor, the former attorney general, and now acting
absolutely
governor Andy Beshear in the state of Kentucky?
Yep. That's why I need.
Do you know how much Planned Parenthood donated to their campaigns?
That's a strange question, because the one attorney that I did have here in Louisville, he's been fighting against Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, and he actually is the one that got me the records that my own attorneys told me that they could not get.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that actually got my own records, my handwritten notes, and everything from the abortion clinic, and numerous other complaints that had been brought against the abortion clinic. But like I said, he needed the money to go on to, Supreme Court, because this case was going to take all of his time. But yes, that's a major issue as far as it's the money that's coming in to the abortion clinics.
But if you're the governor or the attorney general or the OIG, aren't you going to want a clean facility to operate out of? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. If you find something wrong and you bring it to their attention, because it's your job to go out and to find things that are wrong. Your job is to go out and find discrepancies so we can fix it and make it better for the next patient. Patient safety and security and all that other stuff that the government, says, hey, this is our job as a government. We're here to protect people. Why did they operate out of against not only your best interests, but operate against the best interests of the patients that were going to this facility? What has your life been like ever since this all started?
Well, I see now why people don't become whistleblowers, because it changes your entire life. Not just the emotional impact. I mean, I was blackballed and couldn't get a job anywhere. And then when I did get a job, I was so, emotionally stressed over what was getting ready to happen. I couldn't focus on that job. And so just after, about, I think I was there maybe 6 months, I had to, leave that position, because there's no way that I could continue doing what I was doing there. And the emotional toll that it had taken on me and my family, because bear in mind, this was a job that I was going to be retiring from. And so now, after, the time waiting to get to the trial, and then thinking this is going to be a slam dunk because of the evidence that's there, then finding out my own attorneys, has flipped on me, and now finding out the issues with the judge. I mean, this is all starting to connect the dots, because actually my trial should have been in Frankfurt and not in Louisville, because the main office for OIG is in Frankfurt. But it just seems a little weird that the judge that I had, his wife is a pro-abortion activist, and he was friends with one of the jurors and didn't disclose that to anyone. I mean, that right there should have gotten me a new trial, but that evidence has got to get to, I guess, the Supreme Court so they can see it, so I could get a new trial.
But is Governor Beshear powerful enough to say, no, it's not going to go there, because I have assets, here and there. I mean, he could have been, he could have very been the vice president nominee.
Because get this. Now, remember the name I told you earlier, one of the attorneys that basically threatened me, that told my attorneys everything, was one of the attorneys that was on the case. His name was Matthew Kleiner. Well, after the trial and everything, he was then appointed to the Attorney General's office as the attorney that covered Medicare, Medicaid fraud. Now, wait a minute. You've got an attorney that's trying to prevent me to reporting Medicare, Medicaid fraud. Now he's put in a position, promoted to the Attorney General's office, where he is now the first person it has to go through to even be reported anywhere else in the state. That ought to throw up some red flags.
Boy, we got some corruption. Yeah, we've got some corruption in Kentucky, and it's sad. I don't even recognize this country anymore.
Well, I mean, and that's a shame. Everybody gets on TV, and they think they're made out to be something they're not. But you've got Andy Bashir to be speaking about being a devout Christian, and he's actually a deacon at a church here in Louisville, and then start talking about abortion and how he's for it. And he could have easily addressed this when he was Attorney General. He could have addressed it when he was, then governor, and continued then to put an attorney in the Attorney General's office that's over Medicaid fraud that was trying to prevent me to revealing it. I mean, it would be I'm not an attorney, and I've been so stressed over this over the years. Luckily, it's for records because, my memory isn't what it used to be. All the medication and stuff from the VA, not to mention, they found a brain tumor recently. Luckily, everything that was said and done is in the record.
Right.
Or it's something I have records of that I've made copies and I've distributed to places that, is secure. But if I don't have an attorney to do this, I don't know how I can do it on my own. My wife.
It's almost as if we're not even living in a free country anymore. Because again, we have so many roadblocks and so many walls that are put up against us that if you are holding on to information that could go against somebody that's extremely powerful in this country, it'll never be seen. And that's where influencers and podcasters and, guys like us that are coming out there and standing up for the good of the country and saying, whoa, this isn't right here. We have laws, rules, and regulations that protect folks like me. And it doesn't matter if they're there because you're not even obeying the laws that are currently on the books.
Right. I mean, it's crazy.
And it scares people. It scares people to give up because they're like, did I see one too many movies, or am I really in fear for my life here? And those are very, very real, moments.
I can't make this stuff up.
Playing tricks on you. You got emotional stress, you've got mental stress, you've got physical stress, you've got anxiety, you've got depression, and everything just kind of morphs into this, deluge, if you will, of despair. And you start to question yourself. Is this right? You're being gaslit, almost in a way.
And the more, I try to forget about some of the things that happened, because it gets to you when, you have a little old lady in pain and she tries to get help and you try to help her. And then because of money, you're just going to neglect them. And like I said, the things that I'm saying, it's not my opinion. It's facts. It's facts that's in the court record right now.
Yeah, and folks, it is. I have vetted this man, and he has sent me paper on paper on paper, and these aren't allegations. This has been in the court of law. This is, and it's not done yet. We're at a time here, Tony. I just want to thank you for joining me. We got to have you back once this gets a little further on your new case, when that may be and when that may come up.
I need an attorney. If you know any attorneys that want to take this on, hey, send them my way. Somebody's got to stand up.
How can people get a hold of you, Tony?
I've got I've got an email and I've got my phone number. Feel free to call me on, anytime, my cell. I mean, anybody can get any information on anybody. So anybody can get my contact information online if they want to, but it's my cell number here in Louisville is 270-821-8334. Or my email is TonyCisney007@gmail.com. That's TonyCisney007@gmail.com.
Perfect. Hey, man, I wish you nothing but the best here moving forward, with your health. And, I just, pray that you could find some peace, through.
And this is just a start. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a huge, huge issue. And, this is just a little bit of the information. But a lot of the stuff we're talking about, if they Google online, they can pull up a lot of the court records.
Mm-hmm.
If they pull up Tony
Just
Cisney
Google
versus the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
All right, man. Well, listen, you hang in there and keep us updated on where this all goes, as I want to follow this very, very closely.
I appreciate that. I need that.
Yes, sir. You have yourself a great day, Tony.
All right. Thank you. Hopefully I'll be talking to you soon.
Yes, sir.
All right.
God bless. Well, there you got it, folks. Tony Cisney, a whistleblower, a former whistleblower for the state of Kentucky, a guy who would go out and be healthcare enforcement and inspecting some of our most vulnerable patients in the country at nursing homes and doctors' offices and Planned Parenthood. And when you do your job sometimes too good, they want you out of that position. Because if you're not there to go along, to get along, they will find a way to replace you. And that can come in the form of a lot of different things. And in Tony's case, it came in the form of retaliation. Seemed as if there was a lot of made men on top there that did not want to be exposed. But what Tony did is he shined a light. And folks, this is all public record here. Just Google Tony Cisney, Kentucky, and you will see a lot of the court that he went through, his proceedings, and and everything that he has been through ever since. And not to include, he's also a veteran too of the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Army. I consider him to be an honorable man that was trying to do the right thing when people were working against him. And by working against him, you're working against the good of the people. You're working against the good of the country. And as Americans, that's not what we do. Honor, courage, and commitment. It seems as if they become empty words over the years, and we need to change that. Folks, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the program. It's never been easier to listen to this podcast. We're on so many different platforms right now. All you got to do is just search Today with Tally Podcast, and you will find us, hopefully, on a platform that you follow. If not, go ahead and download it and start listening. We've got 242 podcasts in a year or 2 years now. And there's something for everybody out there. I'm getting better at it. Yeah, I'm still a rookie. I'm a two-year rookie, right? I was redshirted my first year. But hey, also go to briantally.com. Get my new book. I didn't choose this job. It chose me. Kind of taking on some powerful made folks as well. And it's not an easy job. It is not an easy job, but somebody has to do it. And when that call comes in, are you going to answer that call to service? I know folks like me and Tony have. It's not an easy job, and it doesn't come with a paycheck. It comes with, again, helping your country and helping those folks in need, vulnerable folks in need, whether they're veterans or if they're in a nursing home. They have a voice, and without us, they are voiceless. Folks, have a great evening. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.
This is the Today with Tally podcast.